So very happy to bring to you today Jeff Levitan, who John and I worked with in the early 2000s at World Financial Group, where Jeff is currently an executive chairman. World Financial Group is a Transamerica Company where Jeff oversees over 700 locations in the US and Canada that's comprised of over 13,000 registered representatives. Jeff is also a founder of All for One, which is a charitable organization serving underprivileged children in 19 different countries. He's also an author. You can find his books on Amazon. And John and I were very pleased to get back in touch with him for this podcast today, Jeff Levitan. Jeff, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, gentlemen. I'm glad to be here.
Absolutely. Long time no see. And if you wouldn't mind kicking us off with just tell people a little bit about yourself and what you do and a little bit about your story.
Yeah, I'd love to. So look, my name is Jeff Levitan and born and raised in Chicago, Illinois, in one of the south suburbs, which if you know anything about Chicago, that's the blue collar, no collar, hardworking, broke suburbs. And that's where I grew up, son of a truck driver and a waitress. And we struggled financially, like a lot of families do. Watched my parents fight about money my whole childhood. And I knew when I grew up, whatever I did for a living, I didn't know what it would be, but it would have to be good enough to where I can make enough money to avoid the pain of having to fight about the lack of money. You know, Tony Robbins always says you're either motivated by the pain avoidance or the gain of pleasure of some sort. And I was definitely motivated by pain avoidance. So, you know, I went to, I grew up in the trades working with my hands. And then I ended up at community college my first year. That's all I could afford. And then I went to Illinois State University and I barely graduated out of there. Got a degree though. And went out to go work in big corporate America. Like most people, found myself a couple of years in a job I didn't like. And I had bought the big dream that I'd work somewhere for 30 years and maybe run the company someday. And after 2 years, I was looking for something else. And luckily, somebody recruited me into an entrepreneurial venture. It happened to be insurance and financial services. And I could build a sales and marketing team as well as sell. And at the age of 24, I got started in that business and I wasn't afraid of hard work. So I worked very hard. I wasn't smart enough to create anything. So I followed a system that they had already put in place. And 4 years later, I was a millionaire. So not only was I a millionaire, I was making over $1 million a year at the age of 29 and tried to retire the first time at age 30. Didn't work out, so it's not what it's cut out to be. Certainly, if you're a driven person and a person of purpose, just partying because you can isn't so fulfilling. So I knew I needed to get back to something, but it wasn't going to just be to make more money. I knew that money wasn't going to keep me motivated forever. It had to be something deeper. So I started to ask myself some big questions like, what could I do with my life that would make a huge lasting impression or impact in the lives of others? So I started a children's charity, and I was going to help those worst off, most at risk in the world, which I summated were probably orphans in third world countries, have a chance of living and prospering. So I started All for One, which is an international children's charity focused on health and education programs for underprivileged children in underdeveloped countries. Started that in the year 2000 at the age of 30. And now that's been in existence for 20 years and we're in about 19 countries. We've helped tens of thousands of children. We've built these things called child prosperity centers, which are schools, orphanages, and clinics all on one campus. And we got several of them around the world. And I've adopted children. I got married and had children of my own and adopted children. I've got 4 biological children from my wife, Cam. And then we've got 1 adopted child living with us from Sierra Leone. And I have 3 other adopted children in Uganda on their way over right now. They should be here in the first quarter of 2021. and still got my business. Got about 700 locations around the United States and a little bit in Canada, and somewhere around 13,000 licensed representatives and insurance agents all over. I got my children's charity as my philanthropy and my give back program. And then I've got my faith and family. So everything's going great. Life is good. It's not without challenges. But I will tell you, I'm certainly more blessed than most people I could think of. And I count those blessings every day, which keeps me happy and positive in the face of all the negativity in the world. I get up every day and choose to be happy and excited about the day. And I go to work, try to make a great contribution to the lives of others. And it's what goes around comes around, and it's come around a lot for me. So I feel really grateful. I keep giving back. Turning 50 here in a few weeks, and I'm at my high school weight. So I'm healthy, knock on wood, feeling good. And looking forward to the next 50 years.
It's awesome. Thank goodness you didn't retire.
You know what? Thank you. I'm glad that I didn't. I'm glad that I had chances to, but if you got a purpose or a cause big enough, retirement's really not in the cards.
Yeah, congratulations on the success. 700 locations, 13,000 people licensed, and 19 countries, and all for one is amazing. And you had referenced some of the challenges. Can you speak to, in your experience in working with leaders who run businesses, what do you notice about the leaders who are able to overcome challenges versus the leaders who are overcome by the challenges?
You know, challenges come in a lot of different forms. A lot of them are internal, some are external. I think the hardest ones to overcome are the internal ones. Some people have to have very, strong emotional fortitude. A lot of people, they know their business well, they have great skills, but they just need to be able to handle themselves emotionally when things happen that are out of their control. And that's going to happen all the time in our lives. And I notice some business owners and business leaders are good at handling themselves within adversity. And they look for the opportunity that lies within the adversity and get to work on the solution. And they end up spending 90% of their time on the solution and 10% dealing with the problem, whereas some people get overwhelmed with the problems and the emotions that swirl around and are, involved with that, and it crushes them. They just, every time they think about the problem, they relive it a little bit, right? And so unless they can focus more on where they're going than their past, they get stuck in their present and their past, and they can't move forward. So I would just say it depends on the problem they're facing. If it's internal, they've got to just have strong emotional fortitude all the time. And I know that for myself, when it comes to dealing with adversity and dealing with problems, I got to go right back to reading my goals. I got to unplug, reread my goals, remotivate myself, get around positive people, positive news, recommit to something, and then dive back in and get to work. We all get knocked down. It's just how quick do you get back on? So,
well, Jeff, I know certainly, and Rich may feel the same way. I think a lot of the way you perceive things is sometimes your reality. And I can remember spending time with you back 20 years ago or so. And I remember Todd, one of the gentlemen who worked with us, one day coming in, getting a police ticket and being so proud that the cop stopped him on the side of the road and slowed him down before he got in an accident. And, it's funny because a lot of the positivity and air that you bring, the charisma that you bring, I think was very infectious to me personally. And I want to thank you for that. I mean, the goal setting, the questions you ask yourself, the way your perception is your reality and how you look at things. So I'm so excited to speak with you today because I had a big impact on me. I know certainly as much so, if not more, on Rich in terms of the way you view things. And, when you talked a little bit earlier about the way you grew up and, what you want to change things, right? You want the avoidance of pain. But somewhere along the way, somebody triggered that inside of you, just as you triggered it inside of us. Who were those people, and how did you find those people?
Well, thanks. I think having mentors in any area of life that you want to get better at, you got to really guard those associations, but you also have to seek them out. They aren't going to seek you out. if you want a mentor, if you want to be better, you got to find out who's where you want to be or accomplished what you want to accomplish, and see if you could earn time with them, if you could get up close to them and be around them and study them. And there were a few people in particular in my life. One of them is a guy named Greg Kapp. And I met him when I was 24 years old. He was one of my very first mentors. And still today, he's just such an important person in my life. But he was mentoring me when it came to my faith. He was a mentor to me when it came to family. And I didn't grow up with a strong, successful background in either of those areas. You know, my parents got divorced ultimately, and I didn't grow up in a household with faith. Forget about religion, but we didn't even have faith. You know, faith doesn't have to do with religion. It just has to do with the belief in the unseen or not yet happened. And we just took things at face value growing up on the south side of Chicago. So I met Greg, and all of a sudden he was a man of faith, and the way he dealt with adversity and dealt with people that he didn't like or that didn't like him, I just never seen anything like it. He walked the walk, and I never seen anyone like him. And so he was one of my first mentors. Then I started doing well in business, and then I got the mentorship of a guy named Rich Thawley. And Rich was another person with great character. And, you know, even though he was a very wealthy man at a young age, he had this family that I said, I want a family like that someday. And the character and the value system. Every time he talked, he never talked about what he had. He talked about the contribution that you can make in the lives of other people by carrying yourself well and protecting your character. He said, your reputation is in the hands of others. Your character is in your hands. And you got to control what you can control, which is the way you carry yourself. So watching him with that, and watching Greg with his faith. And then I had a guy named Hubert who had this huge vision. I mean, he was just, if you can meet someone who was a visionary, the guy just had this huge conquer the world type vision, and people bought into that. And he was a huge promoter. And I got to see how he was this visionary with this promotion skills. And this is another man with values and character, and another man with faith. So I learned them. I got up close to them. I earned their mentorship through my success and performance. And I didn't take it lightly. And I sought out those mentors. And then I found mentors in other areas of my life, that other people were very healthy and successful in their health and fitness. And I wanted mentorship. So I got good at getting close to them and getting mentorship from them, and other people in real estate investing, you know, and I got a chance to get close to them. So I stopped blowing money and making mistakes with real estate investing. You know, you just get tired of learning the hard way, and you can only go to actual school so much. But if you could get the right mentor and get that shortcut, and yeah, you might have to buy some lunches and dinners. Yes, you might have to pay for some flights and get a few moments with somebody who's the right mentor, and just respect their time. I mean, being a mentor now, all I want someone to do is respect my time, listen to what I tell them, show me the proof that they did what I told them, and be appreciative of it. And then if they ask for more mentoring, I would give them more mentoring. And, you know, I realized now that that's what I was willing to give to my mentors. And so I've been paying it forward ever since.
You know, I recently heard on that the difference between mentors and coaches, and that mentors are about kind of mindset, and it's more global in terms of life shaping. And a coach is more on skill development, and it's a little bit more local in terms of the impact. Can you speak to yourself as a coach? When you're looking at skill development, what are some things that you're a really good coach at when it comes to developing skill in others?
Yeah, so that's great, Rich. You know, I think you could have a mentor that you never meet also. You could read someone's biography, autobiography. You could watch a program on somebody. I've been inspired by all the greats that I've never met before. Henry Ford, Sam Walton, you know, Truett Cathy, who started Chick-fil-A. You know, you read these stories. I never met these people. and then you get very motivated, and they could mentor you by their life. Your coach is in your face. Your coach is like your drill sergeant. Your coach holds you accountable. Your coach tells you what to do and how to do it, and then follows up with that and wants you to be accountable to them and holds you accountable if you let them. I would tell you, as an entrepreneur, though, accountability is for the one giving it. When you're a boss in a job and you want accountability, it's for the company, it's for the boss. So let's say you're an entrepreneur and someone's asking for accountability. You want to give accountability. The more accountability you give, the more you're reflecting on your performance in your business. As an entrepreneur, you can't find anything better for you. So as an entrepreneur, the one giving the accountability gets the benefit. As a boss or employer, the one receiving the accountability gets the benefit. You know what I mean? So I would say, as a coach, one of the things is not only telling someone what to do, but telling them how to do it, maybe even showing them how to do it, Rich. And then on top of that, holding some degree of accountability and letting somebody progress. You watch them go through the awkward phase where they're doing it all wrong. Then they do the mechanical phase where they do it, but they seem robotic. And then, of course, everyone eventually, if they do it enough reps, they'll get to that natural phase where it just looks like they've been doing it all along. We all watch people in their natural phase and we're amazed by them. You know, at the simplistic level, it could be somebody at a carnival that throws the ball in the basket and it stays. And then you spend $300 and you can't get the ball to stay in the basket, right? But they've been doing it forever and it just makes it look easy. Professional golfers make shots look easy that you and I could hit it all day for most of the rest of our life and get one shot like that. And they do it time and time again. But a coach will stick with you. They care too much about you to leave you the way you are. So you might not like your coach some days, you know, and you probably shouldn't. You shouldn't have an infatuation with your coach. You should probably sometimes hate your coach. But they also care so much about you, they're not going to leave you the way you are. And they're going to stay on you until you get good.
Often I think you use the word accountability. Often I think accountability is misunderstood to require it having a harsh edge to it, that it doesn't feel good. And I'm not sure that accountability requires a harsh edge. Accountability is simply, as a leader, collecting a commitment from people who want to be held accountable, and then just simply following up on that commitment. So what is it that you're looking to do? How are you planning to go about it? And then ultimately just coming back and saying, how did that go? Did you do that? Why or why not? It doesn't have to have that harsh edge. Can you speak to how you go about holding accountability?
Well, let me start by, you know, they say the best students become the best teachers, or the best followers become the best leaders. When I got started in my business, you know, Greg Kapp was my coach and my mentor. I gave him accountability every day. I gave him a business plan every year. I gave him quarterly updates, monthly updates, weekly updates. You know how many times he asked me for accountability? 0. Never. Not one time. But I loved giving it because I knew that it was for me, number one, and it kept me on track. And so now as a coach, when I do coach somebody, I'm looking for somebody that loves to give the accountability. I look for somebody that doesn't give a lot of pushback. I don't get in arguments with somebody over their accountability. And usually the people that want to give a lot of it, and here's one thing I've noticed, and Rich, you probably do because you're in leadership with John, you know, people who are actually working really hard love to give accountability. People that are dodging their responsibilities and their work and aren't doing things they're proud of hate accountability. They don't want to be accountable. And they're the first ones when they turn it around and start doing well. Hey, I want to give my accountability today. Well, of course you do, because you're doing something. Accountability is a funny thing to me. It's such a tell. It really does tell everyone what's really going on, just in the fact of you wanting to give it or not. But it doesn't have to be a harsh thing. It doesn't have to be in your face, especially for entrepreneurs. Usually nobody's anyone's boss in the entrepreneurial game, but that's not how you should look at it. not anyone's your boss, but everyone could be your competition. Everyone could be your coach. How you deal with the subject of accountability, I think, is a very big tell.
Yeah. Jeff, when you talk about accountability and, obviously being a high performer, being accountable, and specifically being an entrepreneur, this podcast specifically for entrepreneurs that are out there, and some of them are doing well, some of them are stalled, some of them are struggling through potentially the current pandemic we're dealing with. You talked earlier about asking yourself the big questions, and you were talking more specifically about, maybe moving on to your next phase of your career and your life. But what kind of questions do you think entrepreneurs should be asking themselves to really find their true meaning as it relates to either their business or their life? Because you went through that same exact cycle, and you said, I asked myself some big questions, but you didn't really tell us what those big questions were. What are some examples of big questions entrepreneurs should be asking themselves?
Yeah, John, that's a great question. So what kind of questions should we ask ourselves? What would be good questions? The last thing you want to do is make blanket victim statements. Why me? That's the worst question you could. Why me? Why does this always happen to me? That's like one of the worst questions anyone could. You're just creating a victim situation right there, right? So you don't want to ask yourself victim questions. You want to ask yourself thought-provoking questions like, what could I be doing better? How could I be making more contribution? Is this the highest and best use of my time right now? Am I getting better? Is this month better than last month? Who should I be talking to right now to get better and more advice? Am I maximizing my time? Am I being efficient with my time and my energy? Is this the path I want to be on? My big question that I asked myself when I started my charity, John, was, okay, God, I was having a conversation with God at that time. I said, all right, what do you want from me? What with the skills I've got, my skills, my blessings, my shortcomings, what could this one guy with a couple $1 million do to positively impact the world the most? And I waited for an answer, which, by the way, I didn't have the Charlton Heston voice of God come down and give me the answer. Just asking that question and sitting and thinking, waiting for some answers to come up. And that's when it was kind of put on my heart that, hey, where money goes a long way, places where they don't have any, countries where $1 is worth $1,000, third world countries, and who has the least of it? How about orphans? And so that's where I started thinking, where $1 can go the furthest, $1 million could change the world for thousands of people. And that's where I got started with, third world / underdeveloped countries, low on the Human Development Index, and then orphans within those countries. And then I thought, man, a couple $1 million could change countries, could change thousands of lives. And so that's where I started that. That's where it came from, was asking the right questions. So I would say to entrepreneurs out there, what questions do you ask yourself every day? And worse yet, what statements are you making that are hurting you? If you're asking yourself, why did so-and-so hurt me? Or why did that happen to me? When you start asking questions like that, you're asking for trouble.
It's funny, the power of the question, and then you referenced Tony Robbins earlier, and I think he has a whole bit on the power of questions and asking the right questions. And you find when you ask a why-based question, that question is looking to the past. And what you get in answers to a why-based question is how to become more of what you already are. So if you were to say, a lot of people who want to lose weight, you go, why am I so fat? And you get answers to that question. And you go, well, I'm so fat because I don't exercise enough and I should eat better. And that's why. So what did you learn with that question? You learned how to be exactly what you don't want. And if you switch that question, and you were playing with these also, is you were going, hey, you don't want to ask why questions. The questions you want to ask is, how do I? So instead of saying, why am I so fat? You would ask, how do I become more healthy? And all the questions you get to that are looking in the future. Now you're going, well, I need to exercise, or I need to eat more. You get similar answers, but the answers are more positive when you're looking at those questions that have answers that are future-based.
You also want to say what you want. I love that, Rich, by the way. You want to, when I started having children, they said when you're at the pool and they're running, don't say don't run, say walk. It's the same thing, right? You'd think, oh, it's the same thing. Stop running, or you tell your kids walk. And it's just, you say what you want, stop saying what you don't want. And just even that little thing makes all the difference in the world.
Huge. When you were rattling off questions, I was trying to keep up on the notes, and I already got a page and a half of notes here of things and wisdom that you've shared. 3 of the things you mentioned, you referenced time. I think time and how we spend it is a function and a representation of our priorities. Can you speak to, in your entrepreneurial journey, how your priorities may have shifted? What were they in the beginning that you could even assimilate with, boy, most people in our entrepreneurial journey, here's where they're at and here's where I was. And what do they have to look forward to on how those priorities shift and where they then spend their time?
That's great, Rich. I live by my priorities. I'm a list maker. I don't go to the store without a list. I don't wake up in the morning without a list of things to do. And why is that? It's because I don't want to waste time. Time is the stuff life is made of. Time equals life. So when I hear people, what are you up to? Oh, I'm just wasting some time. Are you kidding? You're just wasting some life, which if you're young and healthy, you probably think you've got an abundance of it ahead. No big deal. But what if you're not? What if you're old and terminal? You know how many old people and terminal people wish they can get more time back? You know how many wealthy people would spend all their millions to buy back more time that somebody out there is just wasting? It's unbelievable to me, because I believe some people can get way more done in a day than some people can get done in a year if they just focus on that precious thing called time. Obviously, Stephen Covey wrote a book, First Things First, and he talks about time and prioritizing and squeezing in more. And before I go to prioritizing when I was a new entrepreneur to now, this time thing is such a big deal to me, Rich. If I die right now, I will have lived a great life. I wouldn't want one person to feel sorry for me, even my kids. I got young kids. My oldest is 12 and of my biological children. And I've given them everything. I've done so much with them, and I've done so much in my life. I think the only people I ever feel sorry for when they die are children, because they haven't had the time to live. But if you've been around 60, 70 years and you've squandered your time, you know, the guilt is on your shoulders if you die. Well, you know, Covey, I think it was in one of his stories about the school teacher who got up in front of the class and put up the big glass jar. And then they put in some big rocks and put in the big rocks into the jar and asked the class, hey, is the jar full? And raise your hand if you think the jar's full. And half the class raised their hand, half the class didn't. He said, aha. And he reached underneath the desk and pulled out a bag of little pebbles and poured it in over the big rocks and said, oh, you could fit in more. And the class, oh, you could fit in more. How many of you now think it's full? And half the class raised their hand and the other half didn't. And of course, he reached underneath and pulled out a bag of sand and pulled out the bag of sand and poured it over the pebbles, shook it in, and it filled on in. And he said, now is it full? And most of the class raised their hand. He said, aha. And he pulled out a pitcher of water and poured it in over, and it soaked the sand and filled it the rest of the way up. He said, now it's full. And he said, what's the moral of the story? He said, one of them is you could always fit in more if you think about ways to fit more in. You could always fit more in. He said, but there's another story. You have to start with the big rocks first. What if I started with the water? Would I have been able to fit anything else in? He said, the big rocks in this story are your priorities in the things that get your life forward towards your ultimate goals and dreams. And the water is your noise. Your water is all the little stuff in your life that's wasting your time and eating your time. Those spammy emails, the junk on social media, the news that you didn't even need to hear from anyway. But it eats up most people's day. Most people start their day with the water. The middle of their day is the water, and their end of the day is their water, and they never get to the boulder. They never get the big, important rock that moves your life forward. They never get to it all day long. And the day starts and finishes with all the little stuff, maybe a little bit of sand and a few pebbles. But that's why most people live lives that are unaccomplished. That's why most people get to the end of their life and they really didn't accomplish anything measurable because they had the same 24 hours in the day as everyone else. But whoever starts with the boulders, that's why you got to stay focused on your priorities. I'm glad you mentioned that, Rich. It comes down to your priorities. If you start your day with your priorities and you don't get to the sand and you don't get to the pebbles, that's all right. You moved your life forward. You've made progress towards the important things. And so I'm a big priority guy. And I think at the beginning of my career, it was getting out of debt and getting some money put away. Let's just be honest. That's the business of business, is to make a profit. Now, there may be ancillary causes to your business. There might be other mission statements to your business. There might be things, contribution. Obviously, I've got a children's charity, and that's an important part of your legacy that you're going to live. But the business of business is to make money. It's to make a profit. And if you're not making a profit soon, you're probably not going to be in business long. So at the beginning, it's getting that balance sheet right? It's getting your debt paid down and your expenses covered and money in your pocket and money in your coffers so that you can think straight, so you can exhale and take that breath and strategize more and focus more on your priorities. So your first priority is making money. I think for me, when I got started, it was to make some money. Then it was to build a business that would last. You know, the Jim Collins book, right? Built to Last, From Good to Great, all those good books around that. Then you got to look at, are you building for the long haul? Is part of your business goal to stay in business for a long time? What's your business continuation plan and your long-term down the road plan? We've all met those awesome entrepreneurs that have tremendous blessings and skills, but they jump from business to business to business to business. And at the end of it all, they've owned a lot of businesses and maybe they weren't successful at packaging them and selling them. They just went under and started another one. Or they saw something that looked better and jumped to a different one. And then here they are, great skilled people. 20, 30 years later, they have nothing to show for it. If I've done one thing successful, I've built a business for 25 years. And I've learned a lot. I've made a lot of mistakes. But as I've grown, I've been working on this one business all these years. It should be good. It should be big. We do about 120 million of profit a year. Not bad. It's not an internet business. We're not doing billions yet, although we are moving right now. Out of all the years I've been doing it, because of COVID, because of being forced online to do Zoom, we finally took an old-fashioned business where you did kneecap to kneecap, belly button to belly button at someone's kitchen table. And we have shifted completely to Zoom and Microsoft Teams and meeting systems like this. And we've accelerated. We're now up 35% this year over last because we're moving into our Amazon.com era. For our old traditional business model, I think we're going to be in the B category and be in the billions in the next few years. And I'm just glad I stuck around long enough to see this era. But I built one business over all these years, and I built one charity for the last 20 years. So it should be big. It should be impressive. It should be profitable. It should be tight. And it should be transferable. My kids aren't going to have to take over a factory and work. They're just going to take over my income stream of millions of dollars that I've built over these years when they're ready and they've shown the character enough to take it over. So I think the priorities at the beginning are making money, building the right infrastructure and back office support, spending the money on your staff and administration. God knows some people are penny wise and pound foolish. They don't spend the good money on good staff, and so they always have staff issues and assistant issues, and they're doing stuff they shouldn't be doing. They're doing $15, $20 an hour work and not taking their God-given talent to do the $500 or $2,000 an hour work. So at the beginning, I think those things are so important. I also believe it's important at the beginning to start with the end in mind. know with clarity what it is you're trying to build, and then work backwards into your strategy of what you have to do next, so that you don't have to go and start all the way back over. You don't have to backtrack and go down a whole nother path. You just might need to do a carburetor adjustment 5-10 years down the road. And that comes with starting with the end in mind. I do this class, Rich, called Living Life on Purpose, and it all starts with you writing your eulogy. You start with literally writing down and coming up with what you want said about you at your own funeral. And you give it a lot of time and thought, and then you backwards engineer that all the way back to what you need to do this year, what you need to do next month, what you need to do tomorrow, and it all has meaning attached to it, and it keeps you on track your whole life. And I've just been following that path for the last 25 years.
Jeff, that reminds me of the book, The One Thing, right?
That's right, The One Thing.
Which is a great book, and it kind of leads back to, where are you going? What's the one driver you have? And then you back it down to the year, to the month, to the week, to the day, to the hour, and what you're going to be doing. And you've talked a little bit about vision and entrepreneurs having a vision, and you've been fortunate enough to be mentored by people that provided a great vision, were great promoters of that vision. You yourself, I know, having worked with you years ago, the vision you had and the way you promoted that vision was very, very strong. Sometimes, the entrepreneurs are down there chopping the trees and not looking above the forest to see where they're going. Can you talk to entrepreneurs about how important it is for them? Because sometimes, entrepreneurs, you have certain entrepreneurs who cast a wide vision, but that's never, they don't even believe it's attainable, let alone their team. And you have other entrepreneurs who say, I'm going to set my 1-year goal because that's as far as I can see. Talk to us about how you would suggest entrepreneurs look at vision creation for their business and how to sell that vision and why it's important to sell that vision.
John, vision is, and that's a great question. Your vision it's got to inspire everybody from top to the bottom of your organization into excitedly getting up and coming to work every day. How big your vision is. I just always go to Elon Musk. I mean, he's got SpaceX. Besides NASA, he's the only one in the history of America to commercialize space travel. Are you kidding me? His vision is so huge that everyone in his organization, top to bottom, follow him, if for nothing else, his vision. And it's created such a multiple on Tesla's stock price. It's unheard of. Yet, he gets up and goes to work every day too. He's not just a philosopher walking around spouting out vision, but he doesn't get down and dirty and go to work either. Then there's the other people with no vision. All they do is work, but they forget they're not inspiring anyone else. So everyone else around them is leaving to follow what? Somebody with a bigger vision or a bigger plan. And so I think it's healthy to have both. Now, if you're the one who's a workhorse, I love hardworking. I feel like I'm a blend. But I will have to tell you, I'm more the workhorse than the visionary. I have to stretch myself, stop, read, think longer term, and remember I'm not going to be here forever. I've only got so many breaths left in my life. I only have so many days left in my life. How do I maximize those? How do I make as big of a splash with this one life that I have, not only in the world, but in my family and in my children and my friends? And what do I do there? I've got to stop and think about that. But in the meantime, I'm a workhorse. So it's harder for me. I'm not the huge visionary, but I got to push myself to be that. And some people, they're blessed. They've got that huge vision, but they don't maybe like to work so much, or they feel more comfortable in that space where they're sitting back in their think tank and they're more creative and they have that big vision. So there's a healthy blend in between both, but I don't know. Everyone says, Jeff, how do you deal with balance? I'm not sure I believe in balance. What I believe in is you're spinning a lot of plates, and the one that's not spinning anymore, you go spin that one. And then when this one stops spinning, you get over there and spin that one. So I think balance is more to do with, okay, I'm working so much, I'm not really selling a dream and selling the vision. I'm going to go work on that a little bit right now because it needs it. Or if you're working too much in vision, but you're not getting down and dirty and working, I got to actually put the pen to paper. I got to actually get down and work a little bit, and you turn over that way and you go to work a little bit. I think if you're you're letting your health go a little bit because you're working so hard and you're stressed. Well, then you're like, all right, now I'm going to get back to getting in shape and not have so many business lunches and dinners. Or if you're in the gym all the time, but your business is failing, you're like, all right, I'm going to cut down and do 30-minute workouts instead of 3-hour workouts. To me, that then ultimately looks like a picture of balance. But in between, there's a lot of plate spinning and running around both ways.
Yeah.
So,
one of the best things I had heard recently, Jeff, a couple of years ago, I think it was, why do you need balance? Why can't you have abundance? Why can't you be healthy and happy and a great family and a great business? Because it's not as if I have to give up some of my happiness for somebody else. There's abundance amount of happiness.
Scarcity mentality. Yeah.
Right.
I love that, John. It is balance. Some people who say, I've been asked that. Well, what about balance? 90% of the time it comes from someone with a scarcity mentality.
One of the things,
we're jealous and envy. They see someone succeeding and passionate about something, and they're not really that passionate about anything. They're chill, and they just want to, I just want to, salt life, baby. I'm going to go with the flow on the beat. Hey, you have the right to not be that passionate about anything. I have the right to be very passionate about a lot of things, and so it might be born out of a scarcity mentality. I do think you can have a lot of passion and love and a lot of health and a lot of family and a lot of success in business. You could, why not have it all? At least
just
go
touch
for
on that a little bit more, Rich. Sorry for a minute, but the typical thing you hear about balance is work-life balance. What is your work-life balance? Well, that insinuates that if you're working a lot, your life sucks. Why can't you have work-life abundance? Why can't both be great? Why do you have to sacrifice one for the other? That's not necessary. And that's kind of where that theory came from. And I found it to be very true.
John, that one I've actually got perspective on work-life balance. And one of the things that we teach our owners is that work-life balance doesn't exist. You're constantly out of balance. It's just a fact. You're constantly out of balance. When you're working, you're not with your family. When you're with your family, you are not working, or you shouldn't be. When you're exercising, you're not working. So you're constantly out of balance. There is no such thing as simultaneous work-life balance. So what that becomes is balance becomes a perspective of time. And over a period of time, you want to have balance by focusing on one thing at a time and making sure, to your point, Jeff, the priorities are correct in focusing on one thing at a time. One of the things we work with our business owners on in terms of balance and the perspective of business is they need to select which one is the next year about. Is it about income? Is it about growth? Or is it about lifestyle? Because you're going to say, well, I'd like to have all three. You can't actually have all three simultaneously, because if it's actually about income, then you're going to not invest in your growth, and you're not going to have great lifestyle because you're going to be working so hard. If it's actually about growth, you're not going to have the same income because you're investing. And if it's about growth, you're not going to have the same lifestyle because you're working hard. If you're going to have lifestyle, you're not going to grow as much, and you're not going to make as much money because you're spending money, and you're not working as hard. What I heard from you, Jeff, in this is you probably had, and these are my words, not yours, but you selected income, growth, or lifestyle. You probably cycled around some of those. Sounded like at 30 years old, you were picking lifestyle. Hey, I want to retire. That was a lifestyle pick, right? But then eventually you get a big enough business that it's not about you anymore, because you actually can get income, growth, and lifestyle. And now you've got to pick, how do I give back? And it's about somebody else. It's not about you anymore as the entrepreneur. It's about providing back.
Excellent, Rich. You guys are well read. You guys could do this show all by yourselves over and over, I'm sure, on the podcasts.
I don't know. The way I look at it, Jeff, is there's the don't run or the walk. And instead of balance, I like abundance. So I'm going to rest my case on that one.
I would say this to young entrepreneurs, though. I would tell you this, everyone. I think there's a little bit of an order to things. If you get the money out of the way early, you build a business, a successful business, young and early, you get to enjoy the rest of your life not worrying about money, not chasing it. You can still grow more, but then you actually got that whole category of chasing money, building wealth, and you could spend that energy on family, on philanthropy, on lifestyle. And and still contribute to your business and grow your business. But if you said, I'm going to do one first, and you're still young, let's say you're watching this and you're in your 20s or 30s, and people say, Jeff, when you started, how much did you work? How much time? All of the time. How many hours did you put in? All of the hours. I was young and single. I didn't have to go home to a wife and kids. So why not just get the money out of the way right now? I had partied enough in college where I didn't need to worry about lifestyle. I knew that it would be more fun later to party with a lot of money. So I in my 20s, I got the money out of the way for the rest of my life. At the end of my 20s, I was going to be a 7-figure earner for the whole rest of my life. If I were to live to 120, I had 100 more years of wealth. Man, if you could get it out of the way early, I'd go all in on getting the money out of the way, and then you could just program out at your own speed and your own pace the perfect family, the perfect workouts, the philanthropic passions and giving back, and you can do everything at your own pace once you get the money out of the way.
So true. I know you wrote a couple of books, The Leadership Journey and The Tokens, and you had about 5 years apart between the two. Can you speak to how those two books are different and what audiences you are speaking to in those?
I will. I'll do a little book plug.
Yeah, would you please?
If you will. I will tell you, though, based on the books that we read, I'm not I think Robert Kiyosaki said, I'm not a best writing author, I'm a best-selling author. So he was talking about his book content compared to other people's books. I would tell you this. My first book was called Stop It, 7 Mistakes to Avoid in Relationship Marketing. So I wrote that book with a partner a long time ago. That was actually my first book. And it was just a lot of people are in all kinds of businesses. There's all sorts of side hustles out there. And a lot of them give you misinformation. And it's a good book to prepare you how to think going into a side business or a supplemental income or a work from home business model. So that was my first book. Then I built a successful business. And afterward, I wanted to honor the people that were young and very successful like me. And I interviewed all of them, and they put all their stories in the Leadership Journey Volume 1 and 2. So I got a book called The Leadership Journey Volume 1 and Leadership Journey Volume 2. And I interviewed all these young millionaires, and I had them tell their story, and I asked them questions about themselves and what they would do differently if they were to start over, and what it was like working young and single in business, what it was like working with your spouse in business. And so that was a good expose on the Q&A of young entrepreneurs. And then I was approached by a friend of mine who wrote a book called 3 Feet from Gold, Dr. Greg Reed. He wrote probably 100 books. He had an idea, and him and I collaborated on The Tokens, which is a cool parable. This is probably my favorite book. It's a great story. And there's 11 lessons on building the foundation of success. And it's called The Tokens. And that's just a great read for anybody. It's just one of those stories. You read it probably, if you're not a huge reader, it's a 1 to 2 hour read. But it's a great story, and it's got 11 great principles in it. And I don't want to give away the core of the book, but thanks for letting me give the book plug there, Rich. I'm not in the book selling business. I make plenty of money without book sales, but it just so happens that when you start having a lot of success, you're going to either write a book by yourself, or someone's going to come to you and say, let's write a book. And it'll be one of your calling cards, and it'll just be kind of what you do along the way. All the books are on Amazon if you want to get them there. Download them for a few bucks, or get an actual hard copy for $8-10, whatever.
That's great. Thanks for that. And
my bigger passion is All for One. It's the charity. If you guys, All for One, ALLOFORONE.org. It's the rest of my life mission. It's what I'm going to do for the next 50 years. And as we were talking earlier, Rich, today we funded 5 different countries and their programs. We did Nicaragua today, Ghana, Nigeria, Sierra Leone, and Uganda. All today. We just had a big outpour of donations and revenue going to schools, clinics, and orphanages in all those countries.
I've got one last question on the leadership side, where you've seen a lot of leaders in your day. And there are a lot of leaders that would have what you might call the shooting star syndrome. They have a lot of greatness and then they go straight down, right? Can you speak to those that are not shooting stars, those that can sustain excellence as leaders? What are some of the commonalities that you have seen in leaders who can sustain excellence?
To that, I would say it all comes down to two things. One, it's your habits. The successful people have successful habits. There's not winners and losers as human beings. I think God made us all great. I do think people have winning and losing habits. And the things that get people very successful, they were exhibiting winning habits, practicing winning habits, and they won. And then they stop doing that, and then they lose. That's one of the things. And then number two, it's reinventing yourself at a certain point after you've had success in picking bigger goals and a bigger vision. When I was 30 and I made my first $1 million, it was a very dangerous point for me. I did, in fact, retire. Rich, I think I met you and John right when in the year 2000, I retired. I went from Chicago to Miami, and I was going to be done working. And I found myself miserable after 6 months of living a life of purpose to living a life of gluttony. I mean, it was fun I needed a vacation is what I needed, not retirement, but I needed to reinvent myself and refine myself. And I needed to come up with a new vision of myself for my own future that wasn't for anyone else, but it would be purposeful and meaningful and something I wanted beyond the first layer of success. And that's the difference. And we keep referencing Tony Robbins. He should be your next guest on this. But he talks about the success, the science of achievement, but then the art of fulfillment. There's a difference between achievement and fulfillment. A lot of people chase to achieve, but they're not necessarily fulfilled. I think the real game in life is fulfillment. And so once you find out that by exhibiting these habits and working hard, you can achieve success in anything you aim at, what do you want to really aim at then? What is going to give you the sensation of fulfillment? Give you all the money in the world doesn't mean you're going to be happy. We all know really rich people that are miserable. They're on their third or fourth divorce. They're alcoholics, drug addicts. Their kids don't talk to them. They're miserable. They're rich, but they're miserable. And so we know that wealth alone isn't going to bring fulfillment. So what is it? You got to ask yourself the tough questions. What gives me the feeling of fulfillment? And then can I pursue that as part of my everyday and my long-term goals? And in my pursuit of fulfillment, can that make me happy and bring me joy? And can it also contribute to other people around me and be successful? And if you can find all of that and bundle it, once again, it'll come from asking yourself the right question. Then those achievement winning habits combined with knowing that you're going for fulfillment can sustain you forever. And your life will keep getting better. You're not going to have these huge dips. You're not going to be on the roller coaster. And that's my best take on that.
That's great. Habits sustain that lead to success. And once you're at success, reinvent yourself for what the future is really about, and then go reinstill new habits, get successful again.
Yep. Jeff, I can't thank you enough for your time here. I mean, we spent probably 3, maybe 4 years watching you in that heyday when you were working every single day of the single hour of the day, and certainly mentored me quite a bit. Everything from the way you look at life to your values, your character. I learned all my public speaking, I think, from you and others, and so many other different traits. So you were definitely a big influence on myself, and I think a lot, back to those times, and so proud of what I learned from you and where you've come from, since then, what you've accomplished. So really, especially All for One is phenomenal, and the family you've raised is incredible. So thank you very much for your time.
I'd absolutely add on to that. And as a thank you to you, Jeff, for being early on in the podcast, you mentioned a couple of things that I absolutely go, boy, I think of you when you were saying these things, is faith, family, values and character, and vision. And you were talking about that in your mentors. And I think you're such a mentor to John and myself, and when we were engaging back 20 years ago, and it's made a difference in the trajectory of our lives. And I know you're a mentor for many others in those areas where you had a mentor. So unsurprising that you're that for many other people, and really appreciate your time on the podcast. I know a lot of listeners are going to get a lot of value out of it.
John and Rich, thank you so much. It's good to catch up as old friends, and it's great to see your success. And I wish you the best of success with your podcast. Thanks for having me on as a guest.